Hello and welcome back to another episode of your favorite podcast. It's your boy Day.
And I'm David. And Day, do you ever wonder if prairie dogs have podcasts?
What?
This is Call Me LeBeau. I was out. I've been in my feelings the last
Okay.
week or so. I've cried a lot the last week.
Mhm.
And I decided last Friday that I needed a little bit of a break from reality. So I went and I was like, I need to be in nature. I need to be in nature, which
Never heard you say that
I
before.
was going to say, if you know me, I have probably never said.
Wow.
hmm
Wow.
And so the thing to me that felt the closest to nature that like also felt like matched my energy was this wildlife drive at the Rocky Mountain Arsenal Wildlife Refuge, which
Okay.
is like a mile or two from my house. It's not far. It used to be a chemical weapons manufacturing area during, I think, World War II or one of the wars. Pick a war. And but now they've turned it into a wildlife refuge. And it's beautiful. They have buffalo roaming around where the buffalo roam, home on the range, where the buffalo roam, whatever the song is. And then they also have like deer out there, and they have so many prairie dogs. And like, I remember when I moved into the neighborhood like 6 years ago, 6.5 years ago, I remember seeing something online that said like, hey, just a heads up, the prairie dogs at the Arsenal have the bubonic plague. I think it was the bubonic plague. It was one of the plagues. And they're like, just make sure that you're not touching them. And I was like, well, I'm not getting out of my car. But this wildlife drive is so beautiful. And like, you can roll down your windows. This is what I did. And I just let like the fresh air come in. I was still in my car, but I just heard like birds chirping. But then I also heard the prairie dogs just chattering back and forth at each other. And they were like standing on top of their mounds and just like talking. And I was like, I wonder if prairie dogs have podcasts. So, yeah, because I was just thinking about the way that we all communicate. Like every species has a way of communicating. Even prairie dogs. Like I always say, Day, every species has a way of communicating, even prairie dogs. So, didn't know if you've ever thought about that.
I haven't. And friend, I say this with love. Were you were you under the influence of any sweet delectables?
No, I wasn't. Not until later. Not Here's the thing. Not until later that day when I was at home safely. And that's when I had the thought come to my mind.
Okay.
Was like, I was like, I just heard them chattering and I was like, that's so cute. And then I was like home and I was thinking about it, my experience there, and just reflecting on it. And I was like, I wonder if prairie dogs have podcasts. So
Public
not
speaking
in
for
the
prairie
moment, but
dogs.
yes, later.
Okay. Public speaking for prairie dogs. You
Yes.
know what, friend? I love that for you because if that was the healing your soul needed in these times of uncertainty, chaos, and craziness,
Yeah.
go for it. I mean, listen, we out here dealing with ballroom fiascos,
Ugh.
Megan the Stallion breaking up with Thompson, allegedly cheating on Meg the Stallion,
Megan the Stallion.
yeah,
Yeah.
which we can get into later. But yes, I know that we had said we were going back and forth about talking about the ballroom scenario, but
Yeah.
as a former DC resident, I feel like it is important that you speak on your thoughts on the manner. So,
Yeah.
tell me.
So, truth be told, I don't really care. I wish he was dead. Like, and he being the president. I'm ready for him to die. I think that that would be really good for like for the country. I really do. And I was like, also, like the thing that's been like that's all I Day just went off. I really do. I was like, he has caused so much harm. He has caused so much harm. I really do feel like the world will heal when Donald Trump dies in a way. And that doesn't necessarily mean that like all of the like MAGA disappears, but like a big leader of it will. And I think that that will be good for the country. But like for me, I was like, I saw the headline and I was like, okay, like And then I kind of read, I was like, "Okay, nobody really was injured, so okay, cool." But, like, that's really all I thought about it, and I was just like, "I don't care. I don't care. I don't care." And I was like, I like, the thing that I have found the most interesting about this whole thing is the number of people in my life who I would consider normie Democrats, just regular liberals, vote blue no matter who, voted for Kamala Harris. The number of people in my life who have said to me, I think it was staged, is like, is shocking to me. Like, because that to me is the thing that's the most interesting of all of this, is the amount of people who have said, I think that this was staged, and I think that the other assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, I believe is where it was, where like someone actually did die, and like say, and people say, I think that that was staged too. And then that also gets into like election denial. And it's just made me also think about like, what is real? I've been doing a lot of questioning of reality lately about like, what do I believe is true? What can I actually like what do I actually believe? What is real? And that's part of the reason why I went out into nature, because I was like, okay, I can feel the wind blowing on my skin with the windows down. I can feel the cold air. Like I know that this is real to me because I'm experiencing it. But again, I was just like, it's a scary place to be, I think, when a lot of people, myself included, are questioning what is fact, what is fiction, what is real. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the matter. And like
Yeah.
I've been hearing from people. And but that's what I think is most interesting is the people saying, I don't know if I believe it.
Yeah, I have found that conversation to be very interesting because now I will say with this one in particular, especially compared to previous attempts, one, the fact that there are multiple attempts, but this one I don't understand how you can have so many high profile people. Like they had so many in the room that the person who would have become president if something had happened to all of them was Chuck Grassley's old behind. Like to get that far down the secession line is insane. And then to like, it'd be one thing if there'd never been attempts on his life, but it's like beyond the fact that there were, and you had multiple people, the fact that y'all were so lackadaisical about the security that this could even happen is insane. So I don't think this one, if there were ever, and then for it to perfect timing for that ballroom court, like, and now they're pushing that legislation. You saw all the, Lindsey Graham, all these people. I'm like, yeah,
I don't
this
know if I
isn't
did see this.
helping.
What is this
Oh,
legislation?
Lindsey Graham is pushing legislation. So, he's always kissing Trump's butt because, he's trying
Always.
to keep the war going.
Lady
So he
T.
was out
Yes.
there. He was like, we should put it to the American people that they should vote on whether or not we should build this ballroom and use their money and stuff like that. He was like, I think there at least 90% or some percentage of high percentage of people would vote yes for this. And I'm like, the level of delusion. I mean, first of all, Lindsey Graham is the devil incarnate. He's an inherently horrible and evil and warmongering person.
Mhm.
Terrible. I really hope that South Carolina comes to their senses and kicks this man out. Am I hopeful for that? No. But he's genuinely one of the most repugnant people. We talk about Mitch McConnell, who is also evil, and that and it shows in his face. But Lindsay is a different type of evil, and I'm really saddened that I agree with you. I struggle. So my personal beliefs, I
Yeah.
don't. I know that there are people who share your sentiment. That it's like I hope they hope he would go. My thoughts are this: I am afraid of what it looks like when a Donald I don't see this like the Nazis where Hitler dies, but then they also lose the war. Like it was a culminating effect of things happening that toppled both him, the regime, and then you go through truth and reconciliation. You hold people, you have been, was it Nuremberg trials? Like there's a whole process after that. I don't see that happening, even though maybe some form of it should. The other issue that I have is if he were to go, we get JD Vance. And JD Vance to me is a more competent form of evil. You still have the Stephen Millers of the world, like the infrastructure. Yes, none of them have the influence and the power that Donald Trump has on the psyche of a certain sect of the population. That is true. And without that there, can those other forces keep it going? I don't know. But I think what scares me is that they would instantly inherit the power, and then they could enact an agenda in a way that while Donald Trump is doing it, I don't want to pretend that he's not doing worse than what I thought he would do. I fear how much further they could take it because they could actually execute it in a way that is much more covert. They're not out here being baboons and just saying the quiet parts out loud. And that terrifies me. Sometimes because of who Donald Trump is as a polarizing figure, I feel like we trip up and become a little bit lucky that sometimes we can put some guardrails or try to stop it. But who knows? I could be wrong. It could still be horrible. And I mean, as a general rule, I try not to wish death on people, but I'm not also out here crying for people that I think are abhorrent and terrible. And I think what Donald Trump has exposed or unearthed or what has he has exploited in our country is the worst aspects of us. And I personally see him quickly ushering in the decline of the American empire. And while using the term empire in that sense, I'm not necessarily invested in the empire of America, but I am invested in the well being and the thriving of the American people. And so that all of that I find crashing right now. And it makes me very sad. And it's kind of like instead of the Democrats managed decline, we're in a free fall. And yeah, I don't, I don't I'm not invested as much in the nonsense of, like, him and his personal well-being. I don't really care, to be honest. But I do think about what happens afterwards. I'm also with you, and I'm nervous even with just the advent of AI. Like, AI has become really, really good, that it's now becoming everything, and we're not even sponsored by Ground News, but, like,
By who?
everything Ground News.
Obviously.
Yeah, but,
Yeah.
Grounded is a really big platform that a lot of content creators and, especially in the political space use because they do really good sourcing and, like,
Okay.
vetting of the materials, right wing to left wing, independent, centrist, all that.
Okay.
But that said, like, it is very challenging to understand what is real, to cipher through headlines and, most people are reading headlines or bylines. They're not really digging deep, and it's easy to spread conspiracies and to really be like, okay, but what is real? And to me, when you can't tell what's real anymore, how can we agree on a reality? And I think the Trump administration, if it's done nothing else, it has really exacerbated that idea of we don't live in the same reality.
No.
And therefore, it makes it very easy not only to demonize other Americans, it makes it almost impossible to have a conversation. To like, if you believe that like Democrats are out here having late term abortions or like advocating for what's infanticide, which is illegal, after birth abortions. I'm like, you mean killing a baby, infanticide? Like, how do you have a rational conversation? Or like, how do you, if you really think all immigrants are murderers, rapists, etc., which is not true, then how do you have a genuine conversation about immigration? You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's I
and
find myself
statistically
struggling.
too, immigrants also commit less crime than, like,
Yeah.
native-born Americans.
It's just becoming hard to talk. Like, I've had conversations with friends and I'm like, "Wait, what? What are you talking about?" Like,
Yeah.
"Huh?" And yeah, like, and this is not new. I think it's just become faster. Like, I mean, people always say, "Oh, did we really go to the moon?" or JFK and these and there's because the sad thing is there are things that are rooted in truth. There are some conspiracies worth exploring. There are some things that are probably true. And we've seen that over time. But then it makes you start not having healthy skepticism anymore. It's just becoming instant denial of anything that doesn't fit our worldview. And that sucks.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to somebody about that. I don't know what
We could
form of
we could talk to
technology.
my 8th grade journalism teacher who made us watch a video about how the moon landing was faked, and that was my journalism education in 8th grade about how the moon landing was faked. And I remember going home and my mom was like, "What'd you learn at school today?" And I said, "Oh, I learned that the moon landing was faked." And she was like, "What?" So, yeah, that was my education in brainwashing. I've been doing a lot of relearning. This is also why I've been questioning what is my reality, what is true. And I was like, I've talked about this on previous episodes too, where I was like, I go to my niece's gymnastics competitions to support her, and they start with saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and it's just like it's startling to see it now, to see all these like 6 to 12-year-olds immediately just standing on guard and putting their hand on their heart, and like they're good little soldiers, and that's how we've been trained. That's how we've been trained. And so I was like, just to think that like we're always going to be in trouble. We're always going to be in trouble. Like
Well, we're causing the trouble now, but
we got to.
I've really wanted to have a long form discussion about the utility of patriotism and really parsing out patriotism and nationalism. That's one I'd really want to prepare for, but because it is something I'm doing a program and it starts with us singing the national anthem. And
Hmm.
it's funny because I talked to a fellow performer, and one reason he said he didn't want to do it was he didn't do the program. He didn't take the contract because he didn't want to do any patriotic songs right now. He just didn't feel really good about the country. And I've never been like, admittedly, I've never been like, I've always been a person that care about the people of the country, but like, I'm not like, I don't consider myself like I'm not a nationalist in that way, but I'm also like, patriotism is, I don't know how I would describe that because I feel like I'm most patriotic when, like, when we taking trips out of the country.
Yeah.
It's not saying that I feel like patriotism. It's more so like, oh yeah, I'm from there, or like here are people, I love the people, or these are people, and I talk about it in that way. But like, I don't feel this elitist version of like patriotism has a negative connotation to me, even though there is a form of it. Like I understand, oh, being proud of it's like people, oh, I'm proud of being from Virginia, or like people have their favorite sports teams. And I think I'd be fine with that if if it didn't often look like people's humanity stops and ends at their borders. And that's what American patriotism oftentimes looks like to me, and then I think I get more frustrated because I'm like, "We're not even out here, like, with the basics." Like, there's nothing to really be shouting on the rooftops about, but that could be a different conversation. But that said, I'm kind of with you that I think why here you go. Why I think that I'm struggling with reality is that the version of life that we're living in right now is so topsy-turvy to me that it's like, this feels like the nightmare or an alternate reality. So that's why I find myself questioning it because I'm like, this can't be real. Like we're undoing voting rights acts. Wait, corporations are really out here with more rights than people. Wait, we just decided to go bomb a country, take their leader, and then tell everybody, nah, we didn't really do that, or nah, we didn't do it for this. And like these are the people in charge saying this. And it's just like, what?
Yeah.
This is what we're doing. And it's just like, and then people defend it. And I think that's what gets me crazy because I'm like, wait, you're defending that we don't feed children? And then you call yourself a Christian? Like, it's like all the
And at
things that are supposed to be are opposites.
Yeah, well, and at the United Nations, when the United States and Israel are the 2 countries that are voting to say that food is and water are not human rights, I don't wanna be I don't wanna be part of it. Something else that, like, I wrote down here on my card of things to talk about was around, like, manufacturing crisis, and I also feel like, that's kind of the current environment that we've been living in too. I was like, I know that people say that, like, Donald Trump is chaotic and all this stuff, but I was like, it's just, like, for me, I was like, for my own mental health and well-being, like, I have to opt out of, like, engaging. Like, this week, I have like, the only social media that I've had since Sunday, well, actually since Saturday, because I didn't get on Sunday, was engaging with our own Instagram page. That's it. And I've watched a couple of videos that people have text messaged me, but that's it. And I was like, and I also haven't been listening to the radio. I haven't been listening to podcasts. I've spent a lot of time in silence, just with my own thoughts in order to hear like what I believe and hear and check in how I'm feeling, because I was like, I've realized, like, without all this noise, that I'm like, I was carrying and still am carrying a lot. I'm carrying a lot, and I think a lot of us are. A lot of us are, and I was like, I've had some really good, like, fetal position cries, like, in the last couple of days, and it felt really good to just get it out because I haven't in
Would you
in a
like to
while.
share any of those revelations or things that kind of, when you blocked out the noise, things that you kind of realized? I know you said you felt like you were carrying a bunch of other people's things.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with, like, turning 40 this year in a few months, and so a lot of it is around, like, what do I and I know that I'm not the first person to have a midlife crisis, and I won't be the last, and, like and at the same time, like, these feelings are, like, they're the first time that I'm experiencing a lot of these feelings, like, last Friday after I went and saw the prairie dogs, I, like, again, came home and I was like I spent some time, like that's when I did a lot of crying just because I was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna tap into my feelings," and I was like I, like I felt like my sister when she was, like, a little tiny girl at, like, 4 years old, like, when she would cry, she'd always run to the mirror and watch herself, and so I I went to the mirror and I was like I, like, went and, like, just looked at myself and, like, looked at myself in the eyes and was like and I just said, like I was crying, I was just like, "I don't want to die. I don't wanna die." And I was like and I know that it's inevitable. I know that, like, at some point, this journey that I've been on, my life, the body that my soul is currently inhabiting is going to reach its end of its useful life. And I don't anticipate that being anytime soon. I hope it's not anytime soon. And I also, like, realized that it's going to happen at some time. And I was like, I've talked about this with my therapist, friend of the podcast, friend of Phoebe Award winner, Caitlin, about, like, my own fear of death. Because I was like, it's the one thing in my life that, like, I don't know how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, what the afterlife looks like. In my mind, the the answer that I've come up with right now is just, like, a really long nap, and I love napping. And so, so, like, that's also kind of helped me just, like, kind of reframe. I also feel like my soul is not going to leave this world, like, my body is going to, reach the end of its life at some point, but, like, my soul isn't going to go anywhere. I was like, my soul might be, like, inhabited in a seed of a tree, like a seedling or like an ant. I don't know. I was like, I think it's going to show up somewhere else. Like, that's how I'm choosing to believe, like, in this idea of almost like soul reincarnation. But, like, something else that I've been thinking about too, and, like and Caitlin has been very helpful in helping me think about this, is, like, just, like, asking myself, like, "What is all of this for? What am I doing? Like, how are my behaviors and actions aligned with what I believe?" And, like, that's another question that I've been asking myself lately about, like, am I meeting the moment? Am I meeting the moment right now? Because I've just been sitting in so many, like, community meetings where all we do is just talk. We just talk about the problem. We just talk about the problem and then complain about it. And okay, we'll circle back. And we don't do anything. And we don't do anything. And I was like, it's just made me wonder about, like, how am I living in accordance with my values? And it was like, in some ways, I think I am. I also I cried in therapy on Monday saying, I was like, it is really, really hard to try to have integrity and accountability and ethics in an amoral, unethical, unaccountable, like, world and system. And it's exhausting. And I think what I'm feeling is exhaustion, where I'm like, it's tiring. Like, we've joked about this from the beginning of the episode with about the Michelle Obama. That's the origin story of when they go low. You said we go lower, like, we go to hell. And I was just like, it's exhausting trying to take the high road. It is exhausting trying to take the moral route. It's exhausting trying to live, like, in accordance with, like, personal ethics. We're of, like, do no harm. Because the system that we're living in is actively inflicting harm every single day. Whether it's the military industrial complex, whether it's not having health care, whether it's over, what, 600,000 people living on the streets 60 some percent of people not being able to afford an unexpected, like, I don't know if it's $500 or $1,000, whatever the money number is, emergency now. This is violence. This is violence. What are we doing this for? Why? We don't have to live this way. We don't have to live this way. And I was like, and for me, I was like, I went back. I've been also, since I haven't been spending time on social media, I've just been going through, you've been the recipient of several of these. I've been going through a lot of my photo albums and just like looking at photos over the last, I think I made it back to like 2018, 2019. So the last 7 or 8 years. And just thinking about like where I've been in my life, and like I'm so thankful for the life that I've lived, and I'm so thankful for the people that I have in it, and my friends and like my community. And also just thinking about like we don't have to, we can stop. We can stop living like this. Like we can end, like, if it's not going to be easy, it's not going to be easy. And it's going to take a lot of different steps to do this. It's going to take electoralism, which again, I'm like so bought into these days. But I was like, it's going to take a little bit of electoralism and the theater of electoralism to stop voting, to give money to the military industrial contractors, to stop sending military weapons to Israel. Like 60% of Israel's funding comes from the United States. They're basically our 51st state. They're a colony. We don't call it that, but like we don't call it that, but we call them our strategic ally in the Middle East instead. They're a genocidal colony just like the United States has been for 250 years and beyond, I would say, since white people came over here and genocided the Native Americans. And so it's like, we can choose to stop participating in this system. Like, and like, they're making it too. So, like, Phoebe, I've said this before. Phoebe is the only thing keeping me out of jail. I said to a friend the other day that I was like, if I had to choose between the psych ward and jail, which one would I choose? And I said, I think the beds would be more comfortable in the psych ward. But I think that and I'd get 3 meals a day there too. But I think I would have a lot more fun in jail just because the men would be so hot. Like, I think. And so like this is just wishful thinking. This is what I have to tell myself in order to like survive. Because I was talking to someone else the other day who was saying that like an expression that he did through dance, he was fearful that like he could be imprisoned for this free expression. And like, we're supposed to be the land of the free. And I was like, we're not free if someone has to tell us we're free. Like, we need to feel free. And so I was like, some of the things, this is kind of what I'll wrap up my little monologue with, because I do want to talk about Megan the Stallion.
Very good.
But I was like, I've been thinking, I'll put some links in the show notes of like this music video that I was listening to by La Russell. Like, he really speaks to my soul. He's a rapper out of Vallejo, California. And I was like, I've seen him in concert twice, and they've both just like, both experiences have just been like, they felt very transformative for me. And like, I'll put a couple of like La Russell songs, like YouTube links in the show notes. And then this video by Official Sad Beige is the name of the person on Instagram. And I believe she uses she pronouns, but like, she posted this video of herself in the car, and I'll put this in the show notes too, in her car, saying like, I'm not hungry anymore. I have everything I need. I don't like, I'm paraphrasing, but I was like, I don't want to achieve anything anymore. I don't have any expectations anymore. And just kind of along those themes. Those are kind of my words. I know that that's not exactly what she used, but that's kind of the theme. And then at the end, she posted this video of someone like kind of like in an old timey theater, like flying. And it was just so beautiful. Like that was the catalyst for me, like really crying. Cause I was just like, that's how I feel. I was like, I'm not hungry anymore. It's like, I don't have any expectations for like for what I want in my life. My life looks very different than what I anticipated it being as a kid. And it's not to say that it's bad or good. It's just really different. The promise that was sold to me, it was kind of a lie. It was kind of a lie. And so I think that that's what I've really been doing. Like, I've just been mourning a lot of like the promise that was like made to me as a child and like through my young adulthood as to like what my adulthood would look like. And that's not necessarily the case. And I was like, I have a good life in a lot of ways. And it's also very different. And it's also like, I didn't ever anticipate that adulthood would be so mundane in a lot of ways. It's so mundane. And I was just like, "Wha-" but I also like the glimmers still exist and therefore I continue to persist even in the hard times. And I was like, I know that all of this is temporary, like whether it's my life, whether it's discomfort, whether it's like Donald Trump being president, it doesn't change that it's uncomfortable. It doesn't change that it's uncomfortable. But like, I've just been thinking, I was like, I'm tired of living like this. I'm tired of living like this. I'm tired of talking about things and I want to do things. I want to change, like, I want to change the trajectory of my life and I want to change the trajectory of like this country because I don't think we're on the right path and I don't think we've been on the right path for probably ever. And so why not July 4th, 2026? And like, that's the thing. I've said this, call a constitutional convention, create a new constitution, or like create a new Bill of Rights, create a new constitution that we can all agree upon. There are ways to disband this that are like peaceful, non-violent per se. I also, that being said, I also don't think that anything in this country has really ever come through non-violent means. A lot of change has come through property damage, which I don't necessarily think is violent. We're in double digits. Last time I had heard, I think it was over 20 warehouses have been burned and caught on fire. That might get some companies to start thinking about paying their employees a livable wage so they don't burn down the warehouses. There are ways to do this. There are ways to do this, but it requires some introspection. It requires maybe giving up a little bit of yourself, your time, your money, maybe. What's all this for? What is all of this for? What are we doing this for?
Yeah. No, I thank you for sharing that because I think where you're at in your life is a normal, like you said, the
It
age
is.
and reflection, it's a very normal life cycle. And I think what I appreciate the most is that it makes me think about something that my therapist presented when my partner died. And
Yeah.
he said, you're at a fork in the road. He said, you can either become better or bitter. Those are your options. And I hear through what you're saying that you find yourself, it's like, what has being the good, the rule follower in this really brought me versus we watch people running amok, doing all types of shenanigan and quote unquote winning in life. And you do get to a point where you're like, what path am I gonna take? And then I'm tired. I think we talked about on the podcast, I didn't always have power steering in my car. So I didn't
Yeah.
know what that was.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that's what it feels like being in a society where we are a collection of people but we're not organized. So it feels like just one person powers pulling through without power steering versus having support, having assistance to do that. And as you were speaking, something that really stuck out to me was this idea of individualism. Like America really promotes this idea of rugged individualism. And it really made me realize that I think a lot of our downfall is embedded in that DNA and in that ethos because we teach people that everything, their success and their failure is all on them. And if you do that, it's a very great way to prevent any mass mobilization, any class solidarity, because you see everything where it starts and ends as how does it benefit me and how did I fail versus recognizing that we're in a system designed to produce these outcomes with a few exceptions that can be pointed to and shown as, see, It does work. You just aren't working hard enough. And I think what you're speaking of really speaks to the need of us to stop shifting to become more of, instead of I, we see a we. We see a you plus me. The United States should, that acronym US should really be evident as us, the United States of America, because we're united as an entity, united people of America, so that people recognize that unless we decide that we want better, no one's going to come save us. And
No.
unfortunately, we think that it's just, we see ourselves as the isolated things. We don't see that it takes a collection of cells to create the body, to create an arm and then a hand and then a this. And all of us, it's kind of like in the Bible, it talks about that parable of like the hands and the feet and the body, how we're all connected to make one thing. And I wish that we saw ourselves in America that way, because the power that we often feel we're lacking comes from connecting. I loved the show Charms, like the power of three will set you free. Like we do need that. We watch all these superhero movies, those of us who indulge,
Yeah.
and we see these like super friends or the Justice League, or we see these collection of friends, the X-Men, where it's a group of people who have great power individually, but they're limited. So it's like, what happens when you put those forces and that energy together? And I believe that there's a class of people with a vested interest in making us realize that we don't, to continuously make us not see that right on the other side of fear and right on the other side of the bigotry that we've been taught to believe is solidarity and class and consciousness, to actually amplify our voices, amplify our power, and to push back on those things, and to finally be able to materialize the dream of unity, wealth, prosperity, hope that we need. And unfortunately, our political container is not built for that. It's at best built to make us realize, to assuage some of the pain that we're feeling, but to never be too hopeful that things can be better. Like, imagine what the civil rights movement or the women's suffragette movement or even the American Revolution would look like if people didn't actually believe in something far beyond their wildest imagination. And I do believe that as Americans, we have really lost our ability to dream because of what's happened, and it's made people apathetic to the process. And when people don't have, because it's not about, I'm not about the capitalist, we have to be growing for the sake of growth. And I
No.
think there is learning about content and being happy with what we have and grateful is so important. But at the same time, I think our ability to look and aspire to things that are beyond what's current, losing that is one of the worst things that you can have, because then it does lead to depression, to anxiety, to things that are a natural response to feeling the despair and not having our material needs met. So I think what you're feeling and how you're expressing it is something that a lot of people are probably acting on unconsciously, but not realizing that it does stem from a deep sadness. I
Yeah.
mean, we talk about, the male loneliness epidemic, and some people poo poo and shoo at it, but I'm like, I can tell you as a man who's unfortunately attracted to men, it is something that is very real, that a lot of these men, if they started crying, they would not stop, because they've never really taken the time to realize that the dream that the world that they were sold is no longer the world we're living in, and that's not always bad. I think in your case where you're talking about the dream, that is bad, but, like, the fact that more people are having access to power, that equity is being spread is a great thing, but now we have to have a new vision and a new dream, and I think that that was lost in the cultural shift that was needed and necessary. We never figured out how to reorient so that everyone recognizes that shift and everyone still feels valid and needed in their individual roles. So I appreciate you sharing that, because it really got me thinking
Sure.
about a lot of what I think is a common sentiment amongst the people.
Yeah. You're so wise. Thank you.
Oh,
You really are.
you,
Um,
but thank you.
yeah. Do you wanna talk about Megan Thee Stallion real quick?
Listen, these raggedy. Now, look, after I done say all that good stuff, now I want to say something raggedy. Let me just say
Oh,
this.
'kay.
Who are these men cheating with? Because, listen, somebody said that, actually, my favorite tweet about it was, they said, now that Megan is broken up with Klay Thompson, I can finally say, y'all, he looked like the PBS logo man. And the PBS logo people said, And the PBS logo person comment, the official account commented, "Now, why am I in it?" And I said, "This is what I love about millennials being in the marketing departments now,
Mhm.
because you had that lady out there cooking for you in the first cooking in the kitchen like her first name Betty. You had her out there with your family making dinners,
Yeah.
and then you wanna allegedly, first of all, cheat, which crazy work, because 'cause you're not that cute. Your hair's uneven, you look
You
dusty,
look dusty.
and then I found out that allegedly the person before him was Coco Jones, another
Ah,
gorgeous
also
glamazon.
beautiful.
I've seen her in person, stunning. Again, how are you that boy gives me very much, if he was not an athlete, you would walk by him. Because I have to tell people, is it that they're cute or that they're tall
Or rich.
or rich? Not saying he's bad looking, but in the sea of men, like if you're gonna pick a man to do you dirty and he's just gonna be trash, when you close your eyes, you gotta be like, oh, but that was worth it. Clay is not up there for me. Like he's not a man that I'm be like, oh yeah, it was worth letting that man play in my face. Decent looking,
Sure.
mid,
I'm pulling
regular
up
lights,
pictures of
light
him
bright,
now.
but no.
Yeah, he's fine.
And it's like he's okay. Like, but you cheating on Megan, the
The
stallion,
Stallion? Yeah.
big rest rolling Ray, rest in peace, Megan the stallion. Like, I can't believe that. Sir, you got the hot girl coach. And then it's like, oh, I don't know if I want monogamy. Why didn't you figure that out before you got with her?
Yep.
And here you go. So you cheat before you figure that out? You couldn't tell her that. See, my thing is this: if your mind wants to change about the monogamo, that's your prerogative.
Talk
Tell
about
her
it,
that
negotiate
before
it,
you go
agree
do it.
upon it. Yep.
Thank you. Let her know so she has a chance to stay or to leave. But don't go do it and then want to come up and clean it up. Absolutely not. No different than like some of these went like I and then like seeing these men defend the nonsense that men are out here doing. I'm like, this we are in a war of the sexes at this point, and I don't know how to fix it. I don't even know where it stops because not all women are innocent and they don't do anything. Of course, women do terrible things in relationships too, but point blank tampon. If you're out here cheating, why are we celebrating cheating? If that's what he did, allegedly. And then some people are like, oh, I think Stephen A. Smith, I hope I'm not misquoting him, said something stupid like, oh, she shouldn't have exposed him for cheating because he's a good basketball player with a bright future, or some nonsense. And I'm
It's
like,
not relevant.
sir, bounce on a porcupine. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, we have to start holding men to a higher standard because this is getting out of hand. We have this incel community. We have these men out here hating women. We have these homophobic men. We have these transphobic men who can't deal with their emotions because they're attracted to a trans woman, so they got to murder her. Like, we have men killing their wives. It's ridiculous. Like, this does not happen by accident. And it does not stop by saying, oh, it's not that bad and pacifying this behavior. We have to root it out, call it what it is, hold our fellow men accountable, and stop playing these tiddlywinks. Like, it's ridiculous. So I just want to say to all the women having to deal with men like that, I'm sorry. And trust me, if liking men is not a choice because no one would
Oh.
willingly choose this nonsense. And oh, not all men are bad. You're right, but they're not loud enough. The ones that are not bad need to get a megaphone. Get louder. Call it
Mhm.
out. There are a few content creators that I see that really do that, like Doug Weaver. I love his work. There's the Call to Men social media page. There are some that do call this out, but there's a lot of mofos who are a lot louder who not only allow the nonsense, they give it, they amplify it, they excuse it and wipe it away. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Megan the Stallion.
Yeah, thank you. So,
Did
well,
you have thoughts?
no, I just hope she's okay.
Me too.
I hope she's okay. I don't know. It's like the parasocial relationships are always kind of bizarre a little bit with like celebrities and just like living in such like a public facing role. I was like, I can't imagine like being mourning like the loss of a relationship or something like that
Publicly.
that would really break trust like so publicly. And so I hope she's okay.
Y'all, that's why I say y'all not I'll be on my 5th wedding anniversary by the time y'all know what I was in a relationship because I'm not it's not
Same.
like I'm with you. I don't want to have to I want to date, break up, marry, whatever I'm going to do in peace,
And private.
in private. Like there's no peace if it's out in the public. Like I my 5th wedding anniversary, then you'll be like, "Oh my god, Darius has been married for 5." I have. We're good. We're solid.
Yep.
Because if you know, you know. And my friends know me like I'm very private. So it's like my friends will know, but they also will know not to talk about it. And y'all won't know my friends. So there you go. It's all working out. Like I take that very seriously
Yeah.
because not everybody signs up for it either.
Yeah.
Like, I'm choosing to live a public life, public figure life. And it's like, but my children or my child or like my family or my partner, they doesn't mean they sign up for that. So it's my job to best as I can protect them from scrutiny and outside opinions. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Man. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it with a friend. Rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or the platform where you listen. Get in touch with us at Call Me Limbo Pod on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Threads. Send us an email, callmelimbopod@gmail.com. Go subscribe to our Substack. No, it's not Substack.com. It's callmelimbopod.substack.com. And you can also become a Patreon member, support our work financially. We are in the midst of our spring subscription season, and we need your support. So you can do that by going to patreon.com/callmelimbopod, contributing at one of 3 levels, and you get exclusive content like the full video episodes, early access to the episodes, monthly Wandering Thoughts episodes. There will be a new monthly Wandering Thoughts episode that will have just come out by the time this episode comes out. So go check that out. Again, patreon.com/callmelimbopod, or if you don't want the commitment, you can send one-time contributions on Venmo and Cash App. And, Dave, it's like I always say, fuck being good. I'm a bad bitch.
I
Yeah.
love that.
In
I
the
love
spirit
that.
of Megan.
Yes. Great way to end.
Yeah.
Great way to end. Yes.
Yes.
Because what they say, well behaved people seldom make history. I
That's
love it.
right. That's
So,
right.
yeah, everybody, thank you so much for listening. And remember, when they go low,
We question reality.
yes. So
Call
call
me
me
Limbo.
limbo. Bye.
Goodbye.